What you see here is what we call the power grip. It's always important that anytime you're lifting any type of weight, whether it be with your just lifting the patient with your hands on the patient, or you have another tool such as a cot, a backboard. In this case, this is a scoop stretcher, that you use the power grip. So you want to have your palms up. That's very important. With your palms down, it's very easy for the whatever it is you're lifting to slip out of your hands. And in the way that your body works, this is your strongest way to lift patients. This picture is showing using a backboard and using or log rolling a patient onto a backboard, and we'll talk about log rolling. It's simply in a controlled fashion rolling a patient from one side to the other. You roll them up on their side like this shows, and the backboard is then pulled into them, and then they're rolled back onto the backboard. And the reason for this is, number one, you're not actually lifting the patient, but number two, if they do have a spinal injury, this is one of the safer ways to move them because of their injury. One of the keys to log rolling is that to do it properly, you really need 4 people. And as you see there with this picture, there's one person at the head. The person at the head is holding manual cervical spine immobilization, and they are in control. So they are counting and instructing the others what to do. And then you see there's another individual at the shoulders and trunk. There's another individual at the hips, and there's another individual down at the feet. And one of those 2 individuals either at the trunk or the hips will reach over and pull that backboard over to the patient to get it as close as possible to the patient. Then that patient is going to be rolled back down onto the backboard. Usually, more times than not, there's another move that has to take place to get them straight onto the backboard. Excuse me. So, like I said, more times than not, there's another move that's going to take place to get them onto the backboard. So we, again, will show you how to do that in class during skills. When patients are being carried on backboards, they can be carried from the head and the foot end with 2 people. However, this places a lot of weight, especially on the person at the head, because the head end with the trunk and all is heavier than the feet. The safest way to do this is a 4-person carry, where you have, like shown in the picture here, 1 person at the head, 1 at the foot, and 1 on either side of the patient. This helps the people carrying makes the load lighter for the people carrying the patient. It also makes the patient feel a lot safer because when you're carrying just from the head and the foot, the backboard sometimes tends to rock a little bit from side to side. So then you get the patient trying to reach out, which then puts you off balance, which then you have more of a risk of injury either to yourself or to the patient. And then we have a stair chair, and it is just that. It looks somewhat like a modified wheelchair, and it's designed to go up and down steps. Some of the older ones simply had just the 4 wheels and the handles in the front. The handles in the front of the chair actually telescope in and out to allow a person at the foot end to get out away from the patient, so that it's easier for them to move. And the tracks at the back of the patient have been added in the recent decade or so to actually help. So you're not actually lifting down the steps or up the steps. You're actually letting the tracks roll along the steps, and that makes it a little bit easier, especially with the person at the head end, so that because they obviously have the most weight. To use a stair chair properly, it really takes 3 people that understands how to use the stair chair. Anytime we're moving geriatric patients, we want to make sure that we're moving them, again, where they're not going to get injured. Many times with geriatric patients, especially geriatric females, we find a lot of skeletal changes. These skeletal changes can cause brittle bones, rigidity, spinal curvatures that present some very special challenges. So we want to take a sympathetic and compassionate approach. As you see with the picture on the left here, which is kyphosis, you see a curvature that actually curvatures out towards the back part of the patient. These many times are people who are hunched over. We see them in nursing homes and at home, and when they walk, they actually look to be hunched over. And this is because of spinal curvatures that happen later in life. And then the picture on the right is a spondylosis, which is a twisting of the spine. And these people will actually also look like they're somewhat hunched over, but also that they're twisted. Neither of these individuals in this picture would work well on a backboard. They're better off sitting up because of it will cause them pain, especially if you try to make them flat, because they're not going to be able to lie flat. So it will cause a lot of pain, and again, we need to sometimes think outside the box, with how we're going to most effectively and safely move these patients. Then there's moving bariatric patients. We know that especially Americans are getting heavier and heavier. Nearly a third of United States adults are considered obese. Ambulance stretchers are being made to handle heavier loads, but little is being done to address the danger to the users of the equipment. Mechanical lifts are very common in Europe, but not in the United States. So this happens to be a U.S. Bariatric transport vehicle here. You can see it's a regular ambulance, and they do have a ramp that is built there, and then many of these have actual hoists that are mechanical hoists that are mounted in the floor of the ambulance towards the front that actually help pull these cots into the ambulance. The Europeans use something very different, and they actually use very mechanical type devices for everybody, which tends to save their backs and shoulders and trunk injuries and things like that. So also, bariatric patients can be moved on with more automatic cots, and this is an example of one that we have in our fleet right now. We are hoping to, with each new ambulance, outfit it with each one with these devices. This is showing the Stryker Power Cot and Power Load, which eliminates the need when loading and unloading to actually hold the weight of the patient in the cot. So this device actually, when you're loading, hooks into the device. The device lifts the wheels up. The EMT is controlling the movement of the legs. There's a button at the end, but the device is actually doing the lifting, and then you push it in, which doesn't take much strength to do that, and then you make your transport. Then when you're unloading, you pull it back out, push the button on the end, and the device lets the cot back down to the ground, and then it unhooks from the device. So the lifting is actually taken out of the equation here. So again, saving shoulders, backs, etc.
So we're starting out with the power load or the cot in the locked position. You press the red lever right here, cot jogs up to let you know that it just took on full weight of the cot and your patient, you guide it out until it stops. You get green lights on the trolley there. Hold down the plus button. The legs of the cot come down first. Once all 4 wheels are on the ground, then the arms of the power load system will come down. In this position, you're still locked in. Right above your plus and minus, there's a little red button. You can release the cot that way, or back here. So at this point, the cot is still locked in. If there's a patient on the cot, we recommend using these red handles right here. Either side, you can be on either side of the cot to release. Pull the cot straight out. You lift the red handles up and the trolley slides back in. You just want to make sure it's back far enough that you can close your ambulance doors. When you come back out with your cot, you need the trolley to come out. You have to lift these handles up and slide it out all the way until you have your flashing amber lights. If you collapse the head section, if you're in an elevator, make sure you use the red handles to pull it all and make sure it's locked all the way out before you load. At this point, you push the cot straight in to load your patient. And once both pins in your load wheels are locked in, the lights will turn green. Then you know you're good for your next step. Here, you're using literally just one finger to hold down the minus button. The arms of the power load come up, followed by the legs of the cot. Press it straight in. You're holding that minus button down the whole entire time. Push the cot straight in and it will lock into position for you. The power load system has inductive charging, so when you're plugged into a shoreline or in transport position, it's going to be charging your battery for you. One thing to keep in mind with that is maybe every week or every 2 weeks to swap your battery out so you don't have one battery always on your cot and one battery always on the charger. Now that we've covered the loading and unloading, I'm going to briefly go through some of the things that are incredibly unlikely, but just so you know how to use the manual backup options should anything potentially go wrong. Let's just say that this cot does not have power. The battery is dead. There are functions over here on the side of your power load that will still allow you to release it. When you have the cot pulled out, in this position you would pull the manual release handle, the legs will drop, and then on the side you're going to use the down button. To get the cot back in, if the cot does not have power still, we're going to use the up arrow. The arms of the power load are going to come up. Now at this point, we're going to need to pull the manual handle and bring the legs up manually. Then you let go of that, and then you're good to load. The power load system is hardwired to your ambulance, and it also has a lead acid battery backup, so it's very unlikely that it's not going to have power, but just for the sake of a one-off here, if it does not have power, there's still a way for you to load your cot. You lift the handles up and slide it all the way back, and it will lock in. You will then use this like an antler, and the load wheels with the pins will still lock into that area. Once the trolley is pushed all the way back, you would load your cot manually, like the way you're used to, by catching the hook, bringing the wheels up, and just pushing it all the way back. Because we manually loaded this cot in, you're gonna need to manually unload it, just the way that you're used to doing with your antler and rail. Now that we have the cot out, to manually release the trolley, you lift up on the arms and press this large red button right here, and it will start to slide out for you. And you just bring it all the way out. So in a situation where you're on a gravel driveway and you bring the cot out, the power load system, the arms on the power load, are not gonna wanna come down unless all 4 wheels are on a flat surface. So let's say you bring the legs down, and right now, because we're on a flat surface, the arms of your power load are gonna come down. But if we're on that gravel driveway, and let's say that there is a big divot or a hole in the ground right under the right tire, the power load arms are not going to want to come down. So the way to override that is simply lift up on the foot end just a little bit and then press your plus button again, and it tricks the system into thinking that the pressure is released and all four wheels are on the ground.
So we're going to look at some other moving devices. This is well, many of us refer to as an old army cot. These types of devices are typically used in the U.S. for mass casualties. Many times they're used for large events because they can actually be rolled up and stored in a very small area, and they can be stored in trunks and things that makes it easy to carry multiple of these things around. So again, you won't see these in everyday use, but you may see these in use with mass casualty trailers and that sort of thing. This device has been around for quite a while. It's not in a great deal of use simply because they're very expensive, but they're called vacuum splints or vacuum mattresses. And the way these work is this shows a full body, and so it's actually a flexible device that you can put the patient in, wrap around them, and then with there's a powered device, either battery or electric, that will remove the air from this device. Then it becomes very rigid, and so it is then rigid. There are splints for arms, legs, and that sort of thing, shoulders as well from these devices. But these devices work very well. It's just that you don't use them a lot. They're very expensive, and so most agencies, when they weigh, when they have limited budgets and they weigh the cost of the vacuum splints and vacuum mattresses against other things that they need, they tend to get other things that they need. But they are very, very handy and very useful. And then you have somewhat flexible baskets, for example. Again, these can be stored in very small spaces because they are flexible, but they are very strong, so they can be hooked up to hoists such as this, or they can be pulled, for example, in snow, or easily carried over some rugged terrain, things like that. So they have their uses, again, depending on the use of the device. There are special devices for every special kind of use you may have. So there's a few other patient moving devices to show. This is most commonly called a Stokes basket. These used to be made of wire. Now they're made of plastics, and so again, you'll find these a lot in rugged terrain because they are very light. They are rigid, so they don't fold up as some of the other devices I've shown, but they can be stacked. They are made to be stacked, so you can carry multiples of these in a fairly small space. But they are extremely rugged. And the patient can be strapped in one of these and then let down like a cliff, such as you see here. So a lot of times you see mountain type rescues being done with this, or other rescues in certain very rugged areas. And then you have specialty devices such as the neonatal isolette. And this is simply a cot. This is showing a Stryker cot that has a neonatal isolette mounted to it. These are for specialty neonatal transports. So you may have a neonatal intensive care unit at a children's specialty hospital that may go out to outlying hospitals, regional hospitals, and pick up premature infants, for example, and then transfer them back to their hospital. So these isolettes allow for good oxygenation. As you can see, there's a clear case on the top of it, so to speak. That is where the patient would be, the infant would be. And then there is oxygen stored underneath it, as well as compressed air. On the what would be the head end of the cot on the right side, there are monitors, ventilators, and those sort of things mounted there to manage the patient. So write down any questions you may have, bring them to class with you, and we'll discuss all of these devices, and over the next short time you'll get practice with using all of them.